This week I focused the bulk of my time working on the physical material studies. Your comment of objects existing in conflict and competition was an interesting one and something I tried to keep in mind when working. Overall, I don't feel like any of the images I created this weekend are particularly interesting or successful, but their development has helped me recognize my own bias tendencies in the process of making. My affinity for straight lines and gridded objects, similar textures and patterns, the close-up abstract quality of the macro lens, and the fact that I prefer to be tethered to a tripod. When I began this process on Friday, I approached it as Nelson had advised. Just get weird. That mentality worked, and I spent the day combining different materials without a plan or thought, mixing cut lumber, pattern grade samples, logs, and color gels, letting one element or object guide where I went next. Saturday, however, I got more in my head about the meaning and concept behind the combination. Overall, this felt more forced and less fun, and I think the images reflect that. When I was working on these last two, I was thinking of Erin Sheriff and how she works in both 2D and 3D with her sculptures to achieve the tension between the objects. I wanted to explore what deconstructing these images in 2D could achieve, and I made a mental note to revisit this idea later. On Sunday, I tried to think less as I was making. I brought in some new metal parts off an old printing machine and tried to just see what appealed to me aesthetically as it happened. I shared all of these images with Sarah Leah when we met on Monday, and our conversation ended up revealing a bigger theme in my overall thesis work: my process. On every project I've worked on, this semester and last, it's the exploration, observation, and synthesis of my results that interest me. Even these videos are a part of my process, allowing me to reflect back on the work I've done, identify patterns or insights, and share that work with others. Sarah Leah and I identified 4 areas around this theme that I'm currently developing essays on. They are the value of process and exploration, the concept of a timestamp and its place in my work, documentation, marking as we go, crafting a record to come back to, and postgraduate ethos, how to continue this work in a non-academic setting. Sarah Leah also offered some feedback on the material studies, to get weirder, and she's right. I've been very bound by this idea that the material just had to be wood, and I defaulted to upright vertical arrangements, and I want to try and get away from that. I also shared this group of images with Nelson on Monday's class. He offered some feedback that could further improve them, suggesting a loss of shadows in these first 2 that could add to the flatness and textural tension that already exists, and also consider how I could play with the idea of loss of scale in these next few. This last image, he pointed out, was the only one that suggested point of view. In all the other images, it was documentation of the object, whereas here, the viewer is looking in on an object. This week, I also continued working on the wooden type studies. Initially, working with one letter. This week it was O. Again, not overthinking what I was removing and why, but just trying different areas, positive and negative, and seeing what happened. This last image in particular stuck out to me. It does still read as a letter form, but the point of view seems distorted and you're unable to identify clearly if it's a three-dimensional object. Yet the shadows still remain on the ground, oddly cutting in and out. I also tried experimenting with the letter E and combining it with the letter O, but these still need some time and more attention. That concludes this week's recap. Thank you.